So I'm trying to make sure that my phone is in position. Bear with me. I hate this landscape streaming because it's kind of hard to keep my phone this way properly. But I think I got it. Okay. Let's see. Okay, we're good. It cuts off my head, but all right, better? Okay, perfect. So, the Book of Esther. We're back for the Book of Esther review, and currently we are on chapter 2. I'm going to send a quick reminder to Instagram by just going live really quickly. Okay, I think I like this here. Okay. All right, y'all. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you're in the world. Welcome to my new daily YouTube series, live series of the Book of Esther. We are exploring chapter 2 today. So if you have not already logged on to YouTube Live, because you are joining from Instagram Live, go ahead and join us over on YouTube. We're going to begin shortly, like within the next minute. So go ahead, get to YouTube and join. I'm going to be posting the link on my story for those of you. Actually, the link is in my bio. So just go to my bio. It'll bring you to my YouTube page. And then that way you can get on over and join for the review. Okay, so that takes care of Instagram. Now, YouTube, you have my full attention. I don't really know where to look at this camera. But okay. Hold on. Ugh. This is so annoying. It's like I have to put this camera on a stand but the stand is too big. So that's a problem. Maybe if I just take this out. I really don't need this much. Aha. Okay, hold on. There we go. Okay, much better. We are good now. So, without further ado, let's get started with our review. I discussed yesterday chapter 1, and I specified that if you did want to follow along with the review, to read ahead, but if you did not, it's okay because these chapters are rather short and we're gonna have a lot of time to just kind of read through them together, and then that way, like piece by piece, word for word, we can kind of unpack what's exactly going on here. So in true Kristen form, I decided to, of course, do extra research so that I can understand the context of the Book of Esther, because this is actually a historical book. It's not just a prophetic book. So because it's a historic book, that means that there's other literature that is obtainable about, for example, King Xerxes and his ruling and more information about that. So if you did want to do extra research into the background information of King Xerxes or Queen Esther herself, you can definitely do that. But since I did it for you, there's not really a need. Unless you want to. So in my research, I found for this chapter that these two chapters are actually 4 years apart. So it's not like it goes from chapter 1 and the next day is after the party. Because remember, if you were present for chapter 1's review, King Xerxes threw this 180-day celebration, which is about 6 months. And they were just gonna drink wine, be merry, and party. And then there was like a 7-day banquet that he threw, and that is when he wanted his queen Vashti to be presented to him. and there is the hypothesis that he wanted her to be presented in the nude just to show off her beauty, and she wasn't feeling that. So when she rejected that request, he became very angry. Mind you, they were drinking for the past 6 months, so he was very drunk. And he got together his council, and they were in the decision-making process of how do they punish Queen Vashti for saying no to her husband, because at that time it was very unheard of to say no to such a powerful man. Not like times have really changed that much from that to now, because the human ego is still very much fragile, even especially with people of power. So that's kind of where we left off. So, you know, the council agreed that it wouldn't be a good idea to have no punishment, but rather that Queen Vashti has to be made an example of, because if she's not, then the rest of everybody's wives are going to start feeling like they can continue to say no to their husbands as well, and it's going to be a whole disaster. So from chapter 1 to chapter 2, 4 years has passed. And also, just to give you guys some historical context, obviously the king has many other things that he's dealing with, and one of the things that he was dealing with during this time is there was going to be like an invasion of Greece, and it didn't go too well. So coming off of that, he is angry about the outcome of this invasion that was planned. It didn't go his way. So now he's coming back into reality, and now he has to deal with the whole problem of he doesn't have a queen anymore. He doesn't have Queen Vashti to kind of come home to and to soothe him. So now here we begin chapter 2. So it says, Esther becomes queen. But after Xerxes' anger had subsided, he began thinking about Vashti and what she had done and the decree he had made. So his personal attendants suggested, let us search the empire to find beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint agents in each province to bring these beautiful young women into the royal harem at the fortress of Susa. Haggai, the king's eunuch, in charge of the harem, will see that they are all given beauty treatments. After that, the young woman who most pleases the king will be made queen instead of Vashti. This advice was very well appeasing to the king, so he put the plan into effect. So let's kind of unpack that a little bit. What is going on? So like I said, 4 years has passed, and now the anger has subsided, and he's still without a queen because they decided that it was best to get rid of her. But they haven't replaced her yet. So it's been 4 years, they haven't replaced her. So now it's time. He's ready to explore a new king. So they're going to kind of hold, I guess you could kind of say, like a beauty pageant. They're going to give a sea of beautiful women beauty treatments and kind of allow them to present themselves to see which one the king finds the most favor in, and then from there he'll pick his queen. So we can kind of think of this like an old school bachelor type vibe. So and then, does any of you know what a harem is, or a harem? So a harem is basically, back in the old times, what is known as a man that has just multiple women, multiple wives, and they're all there to please the man. So I wouldn't say it's not an open relationship. It's just, you know, a man with a lot of options, basically. But particularly the women don't have the openness of having options. It's only for the man. At least in this story, I suppose. Okay, so then it says, at that time there was a Jewish man in the fortress of Susa, whose name was Mordecai, son of Jair. He was from the tribe of Benjamin and was a descendant of Kish and Shimei. His family had been among those who, with King Jehoiachin of Judah has been exiled from Jerusalem to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar. This man had a very beautiful and lovely young cousin, Hadassah, Hadassah. I might be kind of messing up these names, so bear with me. The pronunciations might be a little bit off. So Hadassah, who was also called Esther, the book of Esther. When her father and mother died, Mordecai adopted her into his family and raised her as his own daughter. So Esther is the cousin of Mordecai, who is a Jewish man, and he was, his family had been into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. As a result of the king's decree, Esther, along with many other young women, was brought into the king's harem at the fortress of Susa and placed into Heggai's care. Heggai was very impressed with Esther and treated her kindly. He quickly ordered a special menu for her and provided her with beauty treatments. He also assigned her 7 maids specially chosen from the king's palace, and he moved her and her maids into the best place in the harem. So she already found favor in this isn't of King Xerxes. King Xerxes hasn't even met her yet, but kind of like the groomer, I guess you could say, of the women that he was just, or he or she, I don't know, Haggai, I don't know if that was a man or female. Oh, it's a male. So Haggai just he loved Esther for some reason, and I can't help but think off the bat, why is it that Haggai has this favor for Esther? And although God is not mentioned in this book, I think that if it were to be mentioned, God probably had his hand in that for a reason. So, because if you knew how many options were in the harem, there was about 400 women that were a part of this harem. So why Esther? Why was Esther the one that was found favor? It was all for a reason, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So, she's getting all this special treatment and whatnot. Esther had not told anyone of her nationality and family background because Mordecai had directed her not to do so. Remember that Mordecai and Esther, because they're cousins, are both Jewish. Every day, Mordecai would take a walk near the courtyard of the harem to find out about Esther and what was happening to her. So Mordecai was Esther's caretaker, and although he was presenting her to be one of these options in the harem, obviously for a greater reason than we can understand right now, he was also taking precaution because he understood that this situation is not necessarily safe. I mean, and think about it, the fact that he's not disclosing his nationality, or she's not disclosing her nationality, same thing, I'm sure he wasn't either, in the sense that her name was changed to appear more Persian. And Mordecai, I would assume, is also not a Jewish name. But they're not disclosing their identity because they're there for a bigger reason, but he's still trying to make sure that nothing goes wrong in this plan. So there's a plan, they're executing it, but obviously being very safe as possible in doing that. So before each young woman was taken to the king's bed, she was given the prescribed 12 months of beauty treatments, 6 months with oil and myrrh, followed by 6 months with special perfumes and ointments. Back in those days, it was also a standard to kind of hold out on the potential options that were presented to a king for at least 6 months, because they wanted to make sure that none of the options were in fact pregnant, and that kind of weeded it out just so that the king can't be charged with, sleeping with a woman that was already wed or that was already taken. Remember, these women are supposed to be virgins, but of course, back in the day, people could lie, and it still goes on today. So all of this preparation is also for a reason. It's not just to pamper the women and whatnot. So, okay, when it was time for her to go to the king's palace, she was given her choice of whatever clothing or jewelry she wanted to take from the harem. That evening, she was taken to the king's private rooms, and the next morning, she was brought to the second harem, where the king's wives lived. There, she would be under the care of Shashgaz, the king's eunuch in charge of the concubines. She would never go to the king again unless he had especially enjoyed her and requested her by name. Esther was the daughter of Abihail, who was Mordecai's uncle. Mordecai also adopted his younger cousin, Esther. When it was Esther's turn to go to the king, she accepted the advice of Haggai, the eunuch in charge of the harem. She asked for nothing except for what he suggested, and she was admired by everyone who saw her. So, stop right there. So we were talking about this favor that they found in Esther, because the person that was in charge of the harem found favor in her early, which I believe is God's doing. God had his hand in that, obviously, because of the bigger purpose of the story. But not only that, but Esther was very coachable and she was teachable. One, let's look at the facts here. Esther was a virgin. Two, Esther is literally going along with whatever her cousin tells her to do. Mordecai was her caretaker. It appears that Mordecai does care about Esther because he's making sure that she's good. He's camping himself right outside of the palace just to make sure that nothing happens to her. But at the same time, he is kind of grooming her for this situation. She's the only one that could carry out this plan. And it's apparent that Esther's obeying, right? She's going along with this just as much as they're executing it. And the plan, let's read it for what it is. Taken to the king's bed, that really means that she is to sleep with the king and kind of audition for the queen's role. And she's not the only one that's doing this. The other 399 women that are taking part in this harem are also doing the same exact thing. So what are the odds that you're going to be that one out of 400 that is going to make it to be the queen? It's a big risk, right? So she's going to see the king. And in going to see the king, she did not, mind you, they said that she could have whatever she wants, whatever kind of jewelry, whatever kind of accessories she cares for in the palace. It could be hers at her request. But Haggai told her, listen, don't worry about all that other stuff. I suggest that you request only this. And she agreed to that. And maybe the other girls didn't agree to that, but she did. So let's keep going. So, Esther was taken to King Xerxes at the royal palace in early winter of the 7th year of his reign, and the king loved Esther more than any of the other young women. He was so delighted with her that he set the royal crown on her head and declared her queen instead of Vashti. So, against all of the odds, Esther got the position of being the queen. And like I said, it's obvious that God had a hand into why Esther was chosen. And to that point, the first thing that I thought about is, okay, despite all the odds, Esther seems to be the winner, but so also at the same time, Esther was the one that had herself in a position in which she could be influential in the long run. And we will read that. I don't want to ruin too much, but there was a mission to be accomplished. And is it a coincidence that Esther had a mission to be accomplished and still won the favor of the king in order to be queen so that she could be put in the position to carry on the mission? Could that just be a coincidence, or could that be the hand of God? And if you ask me, of course, I think it's very obvious. But Also, one thing that I noted is the idea that Esther, who is participating in a plan that is kind of manipulative, if you think about it. She's auditioning for a role in which she's not disclosing her identity for who she really is. She's there for her specific reason. And it's not like she's in love with the king and this is all genuine, genuine feelings or whatnot. She's there for what she has to do. I call me crazy or call me wrong, but when we talk about our morals and our standards today, that would be something that would be looked down on today. If women were doing that, if women were manipulating their beauty in order to get what they want from somebody else, it's kind of like using somebody. That's probably not necessarily the type of behavior that you would deem as Christian. But clearly, God had a plan for Esther despite her intentions and despite her behavior. So that shows me that God can absolutely use whoever, whether you like it or not, as well. And that's why we should really mind our business for certain things, because sometimes we think that God can't find favor in people because of their past or because of their present. Certain things that they do, we think that, well, that person's not a rightful Christian, so God would look down on that person. And the truth is, that's so far from the truth, because God can absolutely find favor in anybody. We're all his creations. So sometimes the background and the purpose of things that happen is so beyond our understanding, and that's why it's very important for us to mind our own business and to pay attention to our purpose and what God wants for us, because what he wants for other people may not make sense to us, but it makes sense to him. Okay, so so she was crowned queen. To celebrate the occasion, he gave a great banquet in Esther's honor for all his nobles and officials, declaring a public holiday for the provinces and giving generous gifts to everyone. Even after all the young women had been transferred to the second harem and Mordecai had become a palace official, Esther continued to keep her family background and nationality a secret. So she still has not disclosed where she's come from. She was still following Mordecai's directions just as she did when she lived in his home. Imagine that. You were just crowned queen, but you're still listening to your cousin and your cousin's advice. That just goes to show you how Esther's ego never faltered in this situation. She still remained true to the mission that she was there for. She didn't let that queen title go to her head. I think that's important to note. Okay, and then Mordecai's loyalty to the king. One day, as Mordecai was on duty at the king's gate, two of the king's eunuchs, Bithana and Teresh, who were guards at the door of the king's private quarters, became angry at King Xerxes and plotted to assassinate him. But Mordecai heard about the plot and gave the information to Queen Esther. She then told the king about it and gave Mordecai credit for the report. When an investigation was made and Mordecai's story was found to be true, the two men were impaled on a sharpened pole. This was all recorded in the book of the history of King Xerxes' reign. Mind you, once again, this is a historical book, which means it's a real account of real people that has occurred in history. So, of course, there is other documentation of King Xerxes and his reign. Specifically, there is a book of the history of King Xerxes' reign. So if you are interested in the story, feel free to explore more into that history. But that concludes chapter 2. I kind of made my unpacking notes throughout as I was reading it. So, that way I don't have to spend too much time on recapping in the end. You could always go back when this video is posted. You can go back and kind of go over that with me. But I think that the biggest the biggest takeaway from this chapter is the coachability of Esther, the trust that Mordecai had in her, that he just knew that Esther was going to be responsible with this. She never faltered, at least not as of yet. She remained humble in it, even to where we're saying that Mordecai found out about the plot to assassinate the king, and he told Queen Esther, and Queen Esther not only relayed the message, but she gave credit to Mordecai so that they could understand where the information was coming from. So really it made Mordecai appear to be the hero, and that was just Esther's character. She took Mordecai up with her as she could. So let's discuss in the comment section. So I'm going to open up the discussion now to the comment section. Feel free to add on anything that you feel like is necessary. I don't know for those of you that have already read ahead, but this is the time to do that. Or if you have any questions that maybe we could explore together. All right, we got some good comments already. Fawn says, they say don't look for God, but what he does in the background. As far as Mordecai, well, he is her caretaker, so naturally he would try to hook her up. Yeah, kind of, right? But Mordecai, it seems like Mordecai had such a strong purpose in what he was trying to do that, you know, Esther was a part of that plot. Esther was a part of that purpose. But it seems like Mordecai was guarded. The positionings that he's in, like, for example, one, just, you know, having Esther as his cousin, that's one. Two, being at the right place at the right time, like when he was outside of the palace and he overheard this plot to assassinate, for him to be put in that position to hear that, it seems like Mordecai's bringing up was also just as important as Esther's moving up in the ranks as well. What did she request? It doesn't say exactly. It just said that she requested exactly what Haggai had told her to request. So if I was to make a guess, I would just say it would probably been something like the bare minimum. Probably something that wasn't super superficial, maybe whatever was needed. And maybe that made her stand out because perhaps the other women were requesting all kinds of superficial gifts and stuff that was not important. But like I said, this is all speculation because it doesn't go into too much details. Christian says, I thought exactly the same thing as you. Chapter 2 sounded to me like the first ever Miss Universe beauty pageant. Even the fact that the winner got to wear a crown and get the title of the queen. Yes, definitely. That's exactly what it sounds like. Not only is it a beauty pageant, but the preparation for this beauty pageant was basically a year. It said that it was 6 months of beauty treatments and then another additional 6 months of other treatments. It sounds fun, right? Well, I mean, as a girl, I'm like, that sounds great to be pampered for that amount of time. But at the same time, if we think about the end result, because only one can be crowned queen, and the rest are banished to remain in the harem for the rest of their lives. What does that mean? That means they're not queen, so they're kind of like deemed now concubines, so they can't belong to anybody else. It's not like they can get out of the harem and now find love somewhere else. No. They have to remain in the harem and just kind of like wait to see if the king wants to give them some attention, or if the queen needs to be replaced, then maybe you might be able to get some you know, like get another chance at being queen one day, which could also be likely because that would kind of be only if Esther messes up. So yeah, exactly, Fons. They lived as widows until summoned by the king. So yikes. And just to think that do we really think that Mordecai and Esther would put themselves in the position to be put into that doom if they did not have God on their side and they did not have the favor in which they knew that Esther was going to be the one that was going to be chosen? Imagine waiting in line. Oof. Esther trusted Mordecai. She sure did. And it makes sense that she trusted him because he became her caretaker from when she was very young. Both of her parents had died. Did the king have to sleep with all 400 women or no? Because that's cray-cray. Surely it is cray-cray. I don't know if he went through the whole process of sleeping with all of the women, but that just so happens to be usually how it was done back in the day. So he had the option to, but perhaps, you know, a woman was presented to him and he wasn't really feeling her. I'm sure he bypassed that. Who knows? Think of it like The Bachelor. Some of the contestants do sleep with the bachelor and some don't, you know? It's all very crazy and outside of our understanding, but interesting to read about, to say the least. This is without reading ahead or cheating. Remember, I have the filament version. Well, I'm glad that you have the filament version because then you can contribute to the conversation a little bit more so than, you know, anyone that's just reading from just like the NIV version, which is the version that I'm reading for. I have to do extra research into the filament version to get this background. So I'm glad that you're right there with me. Okay. I feel like we're really into this story. There is some good commentary. You guys seem to be right there in the discussion. So far, I would say yes, there's a success. We do have another 8 chapters to go, so stick with it. I feel like when we get to the end message, it's gonna be, it's gonna bring it back home. We're gonna be able to apply it to our lives as well. And like I said yesterday, whether or not you believe in God, whether or not you're a Christian, this book can very much be applicable to you and added wisdom that you can carry on into navigating this thing that we call life as well. So thank you guys for tuning in today. Tomorrow I will be signing on same time, 6 p.m. and we can explore chapter 3. So read ahead to chapter 3 if you like. And that way tomorrow when we come into the conversation, you can contribute to the conversation as much as possible. This live is going to be posted onto my YouTube page. So if you had any commentary that you did not get to write during this live, feel free to comment in the comment section and we can continue the conversation there. Thank you guys. Ciao.